those who watch the news, those who are really hooked on the mainstream and the statism, how can they move to see reality, or at least to start and see reality from your eyes or my eyes? You know what I mean? To see our point of view, because we were talking about this subject, which is really heavy subject, and we both know it's been like this for centuries, right? It's nothing new, but it's just hidden for us, so to make our life feel cozy and nice, and these bad things don't happen here, they happen somewhere else. But actually it's all true. And I'm thinking this is just the tip of the iceberg, and soon we're going to move. Now in this talk, we're going to move to speak about China and a bit about the corona and not the virus itself, but about the whole story and how it's connected to 5G and this control grid that they are building. And I'm thinking how people can start and see this point of view on reality. How can we help them to see it?
Well, all you can do is put information out there, and then people will have to make their own mind up. It's no good trying to, force people to believe something. The power of the information has to be what does it. But of course, the greatest power of dismissing other ways of looking at the world is the power of the program that's telling you one way to look at the world. And this program starts with parents, most parents, not because they're wanting bad things for their kids, but because they've been programmed through their lives with the certain view of reality and possibility. They then pass that on to their children, thinking they're doing the right thing. The children then go where the parents have been already, and that's into the education system, which is not education at all. It's a programming operation. It's about perceptual programming. They want to download a perception of reality and everything, especially possibility, that is on what I call the postage stamp consensus of reality, which is what most people believe. And of course, it's ridiculously unsustainable in terms of credibility, but people believe it because that's all they've heard. They then go through all their formative years being given the state's version of reality. And they go out into the world, and they go into the professions and into jobs where people have been through the same process that they have and downloaded it, confirm to them, as they confirm the other way, that what they believe is reality. And so when given that, another version of reality is presented to people, often they will reject it through reflex action simply because it is a different way of looking at events in the world compared with what they've been told literally all their lives. And what I would say to people is this. We live in a reality which, according to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists in the universe. It's actually less when we really understand. But anyway, that's what they say it is now. And visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can visually perceive, is a smear of the 0.005%. So basically, we are blind compared with the reality of possibility and existence. So the idea that in that situation we can know what reality is and know what is happening is ridiculous. What we can seek to do is know as much as we can within that situation. And what the cult is trying to do through the education system, through the mainstream media, etc., is to stop that process of exploring the maximum we can of possibility and reality. They want us to stay here because then
Sure.
we're very easy to control. And this is what you're faced with, this program. It's what I call the bubble. People living in a bubble. If you live in a bubble, and everything that you perceive to be reality, and crucially, all the information you receive to form those perceptions of reality is coming from within the bubble, then you are aware that of the information around you in the bubble, but you have no idea what exists beyond the bubble. And
Sure.
what exists beyond the bubble is the true nature of reality. I'll give you an example. Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher, had this what he called allegory of the cave to
Yeah, sure.
symbolize reality.
Sure.
Where there was, in this example, prisoners in a cave, chained, and all they could see was one wall of the cave. Behind the cave, fires were burning, and people and animals were walking past the fires behind them. They couldn't see them. And they were casting shadows on the wall.
Yeah.
And because it's all the prisoners ever saw, the shadows on the wall were their reality. This was life, this was the world. And Plato talked about some of these prisoners becoming experts on the shadows on the wall. And they symbolize today's scientists and academia, where they to use my analogy, they become, quote, experts, or think they are, on what's happening inside the bubble, but not only apart from proper scientists who are exploring the truth rather than singing from a song sheet, most of them will actually reject that anything exists outside the bubble, and they will ridicule and dismiss by reflex action anyone who has perceived beyond the bubble and seen actually the bubble from that perspective, and seen the absolute myopia of perception that comes from that state. And most people, because of the process that I'm talking about, are floating around, walking around, whatever, in these bubbles of perception. And of course, what you then have, because it's all systematic if you go deep enough, you have the systematic protection of the bubble. Because if you speak outside of it, you're either mad or bad or dangerous, and often both or all three. And so you have the official narrative downloaded to the population, and then you have that official narrative protected from exposure and challenge. And this is what is happening now with the hysteria of censorship of Silicon Valley and the internet. It's to protect the narrative. That's why when you challenge the official narrative of human-caused climate change, which can be taken apart, you are censored directly, totally, or shadow banned, so a lot less people see your videos or whatever they normally would, because they're protecting the narrative. And I'll tell you how insane it is, and actually how pathetic it is, really. I've got videos on my website, davidicke.com, where there are interviews with Princeton professors who are experts in carbon dioxide. And they are pointing out, after an academic life of studying carbon dioxide, that no way in the world is it responsible for climate change, and what used to be called global warming before the temperature stopped rising, and they called it climate change. They point out that we have about 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which plant life absolutely depends upon. Carbon dioxide is the oxygen of the natural world, and without it, it would be dead, and through that, we'd all be dead. So we got about 400 parts per million. If it falls below 150 parts per million, they say, plant life just starts to die. Boom, gone. End of everything. And they say the optimum area of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for maximum plant growth and sustenance is 2,000 parts per million. Um, and, and, and so you have this tremendous information being imparted by these people that have studied carbon dioxide through much of their academic life. And when the videos appear on YouTube, there is a band underneath it leading people to the Wikipedia version of climate change, which of course is 100% the official narrative, because that's why Wikipedia is there. Wikipedia has hijacked the whole area of where people go to get their information because they can control it. So most people, if they want to know about someone or they want to know about something, they'll go to Wikipedia. And what will they get there? They'll get the official version.
You know, something in what you were saying, I was thinking about you 30 odd years back, trying to blow the bubble on TV, mainstream TV in England. And how I just remember this, I saw it a few times, so I remember it very clearly. What's his name? The host, I forgot his name, the guy who hosts the show. He was trying to ridicule you so the audience will not blow their bubble, will see you as mad, as, freaking lunatic, because you were telling stuff from outside the cave or outside the bubble. And to most of the viewers, they like their cave, they like their bubble, and they don't want anyone to blow the bubble up. And you've been doing it since then, roughly.
Yeah, that was a guy called Terry Wogan, and Terry Wogan.
Yeah, Wogan. Yeah,
Terry Wogan was simply in a bubble.
Yeah, sure.
This is what happens. People say, well, if what we're saying was true, the media would tell us. Well, actually, the media would be the last people to tell us. Why? Because 99% of them are in the bubble. And the other thing is that the media is controlled in terms of what can and cannot be said and what can and cannot be covered. And therefore, the last thing that the cult-controlled media is going to do is expose the agenda of the cult. People are also frightened, People are frightened. Fear is the currency of control. It's how people are manipulated.
Yeah.
So the biggest fear people have is fear of death, which is part of a greater fear, which is fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And so people, I remember, I've known people who just want next Tuesday to be like this Tuesday. They don't want anything to change. They don't want anything that might bring surprises, because their insecurity wants everything to keep being the same. And so when you are faced with the fact that a psychopathic cabal is behind the direction of the world towards this dystopian global state, people would rather that not be true. Actually, so would I. But the point is, if you don't face it, then it becomes reality. And it is doing so very fast. And so you have a situation where immediately people would rather it not be true. Therefore, there is a resistance immediately to it on that basis.
Sure.
Whereas what propaganda does overwhelmingly, certainly this incessant daily propaganda, is it tells people what they want to hear. And if you have two people, one telling you what you want to hear and would like to be true, and one telling you what would you rather not be true, then you're almost certainly going to go with this one. And that's what happens. But in the end, the information and increasingly events in front of people's eyes are bringing people to, in ever greater numbers, to the realization that actually not only is the world not like they thought it was and have been told it is, we'd better do something about it, because if we don't, we can start to see where this is going to end. And so I have optimism, as well as the stressing of the fact that, we probably have 10 years maximum to head this off. Because when you see where we are now and how fast it's moving, and you had 10 years to that, we will be living in a world that even today is nothing like the one we do now.